Welcome to the Right to Reason podcast. I'm your host, Robert Stanley. Today, I have a refreshingly open and positive conversation with my new friend, Rabbi Brian. We discuss benefits and detriments of religion, as well as mindfulness and compassion.
It's the Right to Reason podcast.
Hi, this is Rabbi Brian of Religion Outside the Box, ROTB.org. You are listening to Robert Stanley and the Right to Reason.
This episode of the Right to Reason podcast is brought to you by our patrons and contributors like me. We have all recognized the value of the unrestrained marketplace of ideas and have decided to make a difference. You can make a difference too. Contribute at patreon.com/right and learn more about your right to reason at therighttoreason.com. Your activism is appreciated.
Rabbi Brian is not your ordinary rabbi. He creates outside-the-box religious goodness for digital age seekers. No dogma, no woo-woo. He helps people feel comfortable enough to question religion and seek out their own understanding through mindfulness. Oh, I like that. Research and his own heartfelt stories. He also runs the popular The 77% Weekly Newsletter. You can find that at rotb.org or just click the show notes. It will be there for you, listener. Rabbi Brian, how are you, sir?
I'm doing, buddy. I'm doing. Thanks.
Happy to get to talk to you. I've listened to and watched a lot of your content. It's positive. It's encouraging. I like it. I don't like religion, so I feel like maybe we're at some kind of an impasse there, and hopefully you can help clear up some of my misunderstandings.
I think we're on the same page because I've listened to your stuff too.
Okay. Do you also hate religion?
Well, I think we have to. I think there's a word that's missing, and I wouldn't use the word hate, but I have some problems with organized religion.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But religion, somebody goes to the gym religiously. Cool.
Yeah. Okay, so when I say religion, I'm thinking not just the organization thereof. I can see a lot of cultural benefits from that, even from the organized part. I regret not taking my children to church. They're like late in their teens now, and it wouldn't really matter at this point, most likely. But in their youth, I could have seen like just a lot of community benefit from that, benefit from just hanging out with other kids. Even some of the lessons that are
Which
taught.
side of the fence are you on? You're saying now that you could have gotten benefit from it, but you're telling me why you don't like it.
Yeah, some contradiction, right? So
all right.
What I don't like about it is obviously in the organized sense, like when it has control, I think it manipulates and causes problems. I think we would both agree there. If you have a
power corrupts.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, but as far as like the context of religion where we would talk about like faith and that kind of thing, that might be where we have some disagreement, and that might be where you see some kind of contradiction in what I'm saying about saying maybe if I'd have taken my kids to church, that would have been a good thing. And that is, it seems to me, once again, correct me where I'm wrong, it seems to me that
I will.
it raises kids with this indoctrination that there's something wrong with them and that they need something.
That's fucked up, dude. No,
yeah.
There's not. That's done badly. That's wrong.
Okay.
No. People are not. No, that's goofy.
Okay. Well,
there's nothing wrong with. Well, no. I mean, of course, we all do bad things, but that doesn't mean that we're bad. I said to my daughter last night, I said, "You're being mean," and she said to my wife, she said, "Dad said I'm mean." I said, "No. I didn't say you're mean. I said what you did was mean."
Right.
There's nothing wrong with her. There was something wrong with her action, sure.
Yeah, like I could tell a lie that doesn't necessarily have the same denotation as I'm a liar. Like
and sometimes you lie out of love.
Right, yeah. Does this dress make me look fat? Would be an example.
But what is it you think your kids could have benefited from? I'm fascinated to hear you say that.
Oh, so another one, aside from just growing up, around a community of we could say maybe not like-minded people, since they're, my kids are atheists, but like agendaed. Like we're all here to have an experience together. I think that could be very beneficial.
It's community. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
Absolutely. The once a week, here's a big one. And man, have I missed out on this since becoming an atheist. Once a week, sometimes for some people twice a week, right? You go and you become very introverted, very introspective.
Introspective. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm sorry, not introverted, but yeah, very introspective. very, very aware of
mindful
to an extent. Yeah, I'm probably not the mindfulness that you and I would encourage. Most people in religious settings aren't going that far. But to some extent, they are, at least ethically, right? They go back over their behavior for the last 7 days and say, well, how have I been? How have I acted this time?
That's beautiful, right?
Reconnecting with what they believe to be God, but I would say that with their best selves would probably be what they're doing, unaware to themselves that's what it is.
That is one of my favorite definitions of the divine from Eric Fromm. He said, the word God is nothing more than a placeholder for our highest ideals.
Wow. Well, you're blowing my mind, Rabbi. Don't you believe that God is real?
That I have the highest ideals and that my highest ideals are real? Sure.
Yeah, but what about God?
Do I believe there's a force outside of myself? Maybe. Is there somebody up in the sky ready to throw thunderbolts at me? No fucking way.
Okay. So you sound kind of more like an atheist than a rabbi typically would sound.
You ain't talked to a lot of rabbis.
All right, fair enough.
So Judaism we don't have dogma like y'all do. You can't get kicked out of there are a handful of congregations in the United States, Jewish congregations, that are humanist, that have written God out of the prayer book altogether. Up in Toronto, there's a woman, Greta Vosper, with the United Church of Christ, United Church of Canada, and she's taking God out of the prayer book. You can have a fully functioning religious service without the God word.
That seems completely foreign to me. I'm not getting it.
Yeah, because you grew up in one way and you thought that's how it is.
Well, let's be honest.
There are other options. You can still go to church as an atheist if that's how you define yourself. Why did someone say you can't go anymore?
I think we would both agree. My characterization of religion being something that believes in a divine power and that mankind is corrupted, awaiting a paradise or punishment after death, that would be typical and the norm, and what you're representing would be more of a fringe. Even though a fringe I like. I don't think that I'm.
It's not fringe from where I am.
Okay.
Right. All the people I talk to, this is a community I live in.
All right. Well, that sounds actually awesome. So
it's pretty cool.
What tenets do you have then? What kind of things do you have faith in?
That's an important thing, Robert. Sure. So people think that if you're going to have a religious life, a spiritual life, is not without morality. It's not without a hierarchy of values. So I have a hierarchy of values. I believe in love and connection being more important than blame and polarization.
Sure.
So I have those are things I believe in. I believe in love. I believe in hope. I believe in compassion. I believe in all those things. I don't have this overarching God word that and let me go even further if I can, that when people say that they don't believe in God, there was this study, Baylor University 2006, and it was all about North America's characterizations of God. And they said in the United States, we believe in 4 different gods. And when people say that they believe in God, that they either believe in God as Zeus, up in the clouds with the thunderbolts, or they believe in God as Santa Claus, kind of that God's really benevolent and really wants the best for everyone, or they believe God is critical, where God is, not going to throw a thunderbolt now, but you better watch out because God's going to take your number later and we're going to have a talk. Or they believe that God's like a great clockmaker. So when people say that they believe in God, I often want to say, well, which of the 4 are you talking about? Or they say that they don't believe in God. I'm like, all right, fine. So those 4 don't work. Do you have anything that does?
Is there anything that separates you and I then in our worldview? Because it seems like we're on the same page. It just seems like maybe I'm a little more bitter about not just the organized religion, but faith in general and the concept of a God than you are. But other than that, it seems like
I didn't
we're the
get
same
burned
ilk
by it. So I don't have the chafing that comes from having been burned. So I think that's different. Like we all had our own experiences. I grew up in a really open-minded religious culture. So I'm going to have a different I'm going to have had a different experience, which is going to change the experience that I'm having now.
Fair enough.
And it sounds like shit went bad for you.
Yeah.
And also, if I can add in, like, if you have this community, like you talked about, you have a community, and then you realize you don't fit in with the theology of that community, that you have to leave your friends and your community. That's a horrible trade-off.
Yeah,
it's a horrible trade-off to have made.
Do you know any Trump supporters? Not that I'm changing topic. I'm staying on theme. I just as an analogy.
Yeah.
You notice like the real far ones, not the ones that are just like, I don't like the guy. He needs to stay off Twitter. But I lean right wing a little, so I'm voting for the guy because I don't like Hillary. Not those people. I'm talking about the ones that like went all crazy MAGA. Vaccines are bad for you.
I got a friend who just said to me, I'm actually considering getting a vaccine now. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Good for you.
And I had to make space for him, Robert. I had to realize that, like, I can't mock him. He's about to do the right thing. So I got to be compassionate and be like, yeah, it does seem like science is pointing that way, doesn't it?
So, absolutely. So I like to use them as kind of an analogy because it's a current event one that people can understand. And it's like when it comes to fundamentalist religion, at least my Christian sect of it, it's not just that like you have to leave them. It's more like the idea of you used to agree with them like politically, and then they went full out crazy. And if you don't commit 100% to this Trump doctrine, you're what would the word for that be?
You're a pariah. You're an anathema. You're a heretic.
Exactly, and you're one of the enemy. So whenever
but try doing the same thing with your NPR listening friends.
Oh, sure. You could use the analogy of far left people as well. Absolutely. But like, I wasn't trying to go political, but for sure, like within those religious groups, you are not just a different like political person, in that sense. You are an unethical person as soon as you fall out of the faith.
Yeah, so no, that's an interesting thing. There's some work by a woman named Dr. Catherine Schultz, and she says that when people disagree, the first assumption is that you don't have all the facts. Mom, you got to take me to the mall. No, I don't want to. Yeah, but you got to. I need new jeans, and you said how important it is for me to dress well. All right, so you give Mom all the facts. And then Mom says no. Then the next thing is you got to think there's something wrong with her logic. And then after you give her the logic, Mom, you told me jeans are important, that my fashion is important. You got to take me to the mall. And the third time she says no. So she has all the facts. You know that she's reasonable. When you're done with that one, the next conclusion is she's evil. Mom, you hate me.
Wow. That's so
just
true.
The next step. So it's facts, logic, and then evil. That's the order it goes in.
What would the real thing be? The real way to compassionately understand another individual that you disagree with, whether it's Mom, take me to get jeans.
That's it. You already said it. The real way is to compassionately understand the other person and to realize, Dale Carnegie style, that if my parents were rattlesnakes, I'd be a rattlesnake. If I grew up exactly how they grew up, I would believe exactly what they believe, and to realize that they think that they're as right as I know that I'm as right. It's a hard thing to do.
Could you sympathize with, say, a terrorist, for example, or a white supremacist or Nazi or something? Like, could you look at someone that's that far into just the darkness of humanity and be able to maybe not relate with them, but empathize?
I went to a women's march in Salem a bit ago, a few years ago, and there's a guy who's there with his megaphone telling us that we're all going to burn in hell, right? And I walked up to him. I said, man, it's got to be scary to be the only guy on the other side of the fence here. And we had a slightly awkward but interesting chat, and then we exchanged, at the end of the day, we exchanged YouTube accounts. So yeah, I can find compassion for what was his name? Oregon Preacher Man. Like, you can find compassion for anyone. It's not easy. Like, you got to start with finding compassion for people with whom you only have slight disagreements, and then move up from there until you can find. Do you know there's this documentary called Accidental Courtesy about Daryl? Oh, can't remember his last name. A wonderful African-American blues player, and he befriends all these KKK folks.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I can't remember his name either.
Daryl Davis.
Davis, yes.
He inspired me. That's how I got to talk to the guy at the Women's March. I was like, if he can talk to Klansmen, I can talk to the guy telling me I'm going to burn in hell.
And they keep giving him their robes. Like, after he convinces them otherwise, he's just got this closet full of
It gives me
KKK robes that have been just handed over because they've left their racist dogma.
Yeah, and they had no one else to turn to.
What a
He was the only person who had shown them compassion and love. So when they leave the Klan and they lose all their friends, who do they call? They call Daryl Davis. It's amazing. Yeah. So and he can do it, that means I can do it. That means you can do it. But it does mean there's a trade-off, Robert. There's a trade-off, which is righteous indignation feels really good.
Yes.
It's a warm ooze, dude. It's yummy as hell. You want to give up smoking is easier to give up than giving up righteous indignation.
So true. Especially, I see that with the left for sure, where everything's racist. Everything's fascism, and you get to stand on the other side opposing that. And it's not just we disagree about this bill or that bill or who we should vote for. You're a bad person, and I'm the good.
Again, that's that third part where we've turned and it's this classic other thing called othering, right? That the problem doesn't exist in me, that the problem is all in them. And that's just it just can't be true. But it's easier to think I'm good, my friends are good, the problem is them. They are the problem. And then we have an us and them, and then we can bolster our us, and we can be more of a community because look at those fucking bastards on the other side. And the more we have an us, the more we make them a them, the less we know about them, the more we can stereotype them, the more we can hate them, and the less humanity we have.
You ever see that movie, My Dinner with Andre?
No.
Oh, yeah, I would love for you to see it. It's so good. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube, actually.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, so it's this, I want to say it's like early 80s, late 70s film. The whole thing is so beautifully directed and written. It's just a conversation. The whole movie. It literally starts with, I can't remember the name of the actor, but he's the inconceivable guy from Princess Bride.
Sean Wallace, Sean, something like that.
Fair enough. And but he goes and sits down and has this conversation with the name of the actor is actually Andre something himself. But anyway, they sit down, they just talk, and at the end of it, they finish their dessert, go about their way, and the credits go up. And it's just a conversation, and it really does show you the beauty of conversation whenever it's done well. It reminds me of just the 20 minutes we've been talking, because they kind of butt heads a little bit at first, because one of them's a little more spiritually minded, a little more exotic, a little more adventurous, and the other one's very critical and just negative, and they butt heads a little bit first, and then the whole conversation just opens up, and they're just talking about these crazy adventures this guy has had in his life, and I don't know, it's
to find common humanity.
Yeah,
so how do you go from us and them is you find common humanity. And what I would love to see my liberal ass friends do is let's stop shouting in anger, and let's just have a picnic outside whatever we're protesting and invite the other side to come and join us.
The problem is, what about when the other side is actually taking rights from people? Shouldn't there be some kind of indignation, some kind of, no, sure, you're wrong, you're hurting someone?
Yes, but that's not how a child learns. You can't teach a child through shame. You can't bully someone into not bullying. Martin Luther King Jr., right? He said, darkness cannot dispel darkness, only light can do that. Hatred cannot dispel hatred, only love can do that. That's what we got to work with. It's the only way we're going to change people is the same way that the gay rights happened, is people started to see, well, I know people who are gay. And I love those people. And right now in this country, with the divide between the right and the left, I hold on to my conservative friends so hard, because if I lose them, it's over. We have to have friends on the other side. We have to stop dehumanizing. We have to love. Can I quote Jimi Hendrix? Of course I can. I don't know why I asked a rhetorical question. Jimi Hendrix said, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, then we'll know peace.
For some reason, when you said Jimi Hendrix, I thought Jimmy Stewart. I was waiting for a different kind of quote.
Stewart impression right now, because that would be baller funny.
One thing, you had brought up mindfulness earlier, and I had never thought of this way. But I'm combining two things you said separately, and I'm wondering if maybe I'm starting to figure you out a little bit. But
go for it.
Mindfulness in not just like a meditative moment. but as a lifestyle can involve. I'm piecing it together as I go, so help me out. But can involve empathy toward other people.
Yeah.
In the same way, like if I hate heights. I have a fear of heights. Like people have a fear of spiders and snakes, which I really don't have that one. But if you get me up high enough, boy, it is hard to keep my knees from shaking. But in those moments, if I practice mindfulness and I just kind of go into a semi-meditative state, but just to where I'm not really trying to focus on my breath, I'm not really trying to reach some kind of state of Brahma and peace. I'm more or less just accepting things as they are and experiencing not just my consciousness, but the fact that there's other consciousnesses around me, that these are other things that are happening, that the fear I'm feeling, it's real, but it's happening to me. It doesn't define me. Like these are the moments of mindfulness that I find the most beneficial when I'm being challenged. But I've never thought about applying it to my relationships with others through the when filter. You say,
this guy's really getting under my skin. Wow, I really feel like I want to bite his fucking head off. Before you do it, it's being mindful of what are you doing, as opposed to going with the rote. This is just my old thought pattern. It's noticing ourselves and choosing differently. You know the word heretic. The word heretic comes from the word to choose. That's what it means. It's choosing what we do.
How do you avoid getting taken advantage of, or just being used, or the old Christ quote where he says, you slap me on the cheek, I'll turn the other cheek. But to me, I know a lot of people, they just keep slapping. They have no issues with just slapping the shit out of you as long as you'll let them.
Okay, who's going to look dumb at the end of the day, me or them? Who's going to sleep well at night, me or them? Who's going to have a better tomorrow, me or them? I'm playing a long game here.
I guess so. I mean, maybe in some kind of sense of martyrdom, perhaps. But not.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe I get off on it. But I'll be frank. Nobody's slapped me recently. Yeah. Nobody's taking advantage of me. I understand the fear of it. If I'm nice and compassionate, people are going to take advantage of me. But it hasn't happened to me yet.
Speaking of mindfulness, this time that I did go to church recently, my parents were in town. My dad was a preacher, so anytime they, they're
that's fantastic.
It makes sense, right? All adds up. But as soon as they come down, it was like on a Saturday night. So that next morning, they like to go to church, of course. And, I have no issues walking in. It's not like I'm,
You're not going to burn.
Yeah. Right? So I like
Robert
going
Stanley's
with them.
here. He burst into flames.
Right. And we walk in and just have a wonderful time. At least the kids didn't. I did. I love singing those hymn songs.
It's home, right?
Yes. I feel very, very, very at peace there. And afterwards, we go to a very prestigious restaurant. You may have heard of it, Olive Garden.
Oh,
it's,
nice.
It's gone to shit now, hasn't it? It used to, when we were kids, wasn't it nice? I seem to remember it being nice.
Yeah, I also remember people being tall when I was.
Yeah, fair point. Maybe your house was bigger, but okay. So, but we're sitting there, and they were talking about just how wonderful the service was, and the songs and the worship and everything, and how they really felt the Spirit was with them. And I got this big smile on my face. They all know I'm an atheist, and they kind of look and they're like, "All right, what is it? You got to have like some little slant, something against us." Some kind of making fun of us, something sardonic. And I said, no, not at all. I said, but you might not like what I'm about to say, but it has no negativity intended. It's just, I felt it too. And they were like, oh, well, that's great. You also felt the Spirit. I'm like, no. I felt the feeling you felt, like we both had the same experience.
Same thing, no?
Yeah. You just attribute it to this God thing,
I feel that Spirit of, I haven't been to a musical concert in a long time, but you feel the Spirit there.
Yeah. But it's not the Spirit. It's accessing the
something
throne
holy,
room of God.
Something divine. We don't have good words for it, do we?
No, we really don't. But to borrow the religious ones, I feel like being in the presence of the Lord would be a good one.
Yeah. I got you. So let me set up an analogy here.
Mm-hmm.
Beauty, no one can define. Truth, no one can define. Art leads to beauty. That's great. It's a good path. Science leads to truth. can't define truth, but science is good. And I'd say God goes in the same beauty and truth categories. We can't define what that is, the spirit. We can't define what it is. And the path people use is religion, mindfulness, compassion, sure. But I don't have a problem using the word God. It doesn't have the negative connotation. It doesn't have the sting it seems to have for you.
Sure. You can see the benefit of having a higher power and something to aspire to emulate.
My highest ideals are above me, and I can aspire towards them. Sure. I want to go back to your kids thing for a second. I don't think religion's for kids. I think that's a problem.
Okay.
Is we can indoctrinate children. We can inculcate them. We can make it so that they associate these hymns with this good feeling. But I don't think it's for kids. I think that's a disservice. I don't think this should be done for children. It's not for kids. Religion is not for kids. It's for adults. It's for people who have heartache. Not that kids don't have heartache, but they don't need what we're giving them.
Typically mentally abusive, I think. Maybe not in your faith's case,
really
but
abusive.
Yeah.
Religion can be really abusive. I agree with you. And I apologize. I didn't do it, but I apologize on behalf of every clergy person. I'm really sorry. I'm really fucking sorry. This shit should not have gone down the way it went down.
Apology accepted. I appreciate it. The link between secular mindfulness and spiritual mindfulness, I think, is becoming more and more ever present for me in my life. I'm approaching my 40s. I'm starting to see things a little differently. I'm starting to lose some of that bitterness. Like an angry teenager. Like I've in my secularism.
But it's also wrapped up in who you see yourself to be.
Right.
And the idea of non-being is scary enough. Now I'm going to lose my sense of self while I'm alive?
Exactly.
That sucks.
And shedding that sense of betrayal that I felt. I was betrayed epistemologically.
And you were wrong. And it was wrong. Yeah.
What if people, a lot of our listeners are people that kind of came out of a similar background. They were raised in some kind of fundamentalist situation, and they've completely rejected religion. I wonder if they have a superpower that a lot of people that have been secular their whole life or didn't spend a lot of time deep in prayer as a child. I wonder if they have a superpower of being able to access mindfulness in more of a trained and natural sense than other people do, just because of that hell they went through, but they learned some skills along the way that they could use.
I have an analogy for that, Robert. Maybe it's like, maybe you get a real good, strong sense of self, the same way that someone who had to come out of the closet has. They say, well, fuck you all. This is who I am. Deal with it. And maybe you all have that, is you have a real strong sense of, you cannot tell me what to believe. You tried that, it failed, and go away, thank you very much. You all have that in a real strong, superpower-y kind of way.
For sure, but I don't just mean that. I mean in meditating itself, for example, I can get there relatively quickly. Now, I can't sustain it long. If I have a bleep of consciousness that is just peaceful and without all the noise of my own brain yelling at me,
good for you.
It might last a second, if that. But I feel like I can get to the place where that's possible very quickly, and I think I can do it because I was raised constantly praying to God, or as you say, how'd you define that? My highest self or something?
Highest ideals. Like God is a word as a placeholder for our highest ideals.
And I don't have.
But was it worth it, Robert? I don't think that's a fair trade.
Probably not. No.
and there's reason to be resentful and ticked off. Like anyone who's abused in any way, there was some trauma there. There was some disruption that nobody tended to. And that sucks.
I would say I've at least graduated to that level of the empathy that you were discussing earlier, where I don't really judge those people that indoctrinated me, because I know that wasn't their intent. Their intent was to do the right thing. That's
beautiful. Yeah.
I used to be angry at them. I was very angry at my parents right around, I think I became an atheist right about 28, 29. Very angry. I've shed a lot of that.
But anger is a way of finding your own power after people have taken it. That makes perfect sense, of course.
Oh, well said. Yeah. I thought of it that way.
That's with Black Lives Matter. It's with the women's movement. With any group that has been oppressed, they come to find their own power and their own voice. This is a work of Fanon. I can't remember his first name. He was a PhD in well, look up Fanon. He talks all about how you need to get through the anger to find your own self. Can I offer something else? There's a next part, and people don't look. A lot of the people who go into organized religion drank the Kool-Aid before they went to that school, right? So they're really kind of skewed and don't get to this place. And then if they get to it, they don't tell the people about it. But there's this idea of the paradox. Jung talked all about the paradox being our greatest way of understanding religion in the world, in that you can see, maybe this will work for you. So Passover, I eat matzah, right? That's because that's what we do. We eat matzah on Passover. And I say, this is the food I ate when I was a slave in the land of Egypt. I know for full well I was not a slave in the land of Egypt. Like, that's just a bullshit. That's a lie. That's not true at all. But I also know at the same time that it is true. And there's this paradox, and maybe the communion wafer that you can see is just a cracker, but it's also more than a cracker, that it can be both and.
I'm a little confused with that.
Okay, so that the Bible doesn't have to be true, but it can have truth in it. That things aren't all this or that. It's both. It's both pieces at the same time.
I heard Eric Weinstein talking about something similar to what you're saying, and he said for a long time people believed porcupines could shoot their quills.
Right.
There was some truth embedded in that. Not that they can shoot their quills. That is not true. But there was truth that we're not saying in that sentence, and that is you need to avoid porcupines.
I love that. And who said that?
Eric Weinstein. He was he and his brother Brett have been kind of orbiting around the Sam Harris, Joe Rogan kind of theme, more or less. But he also says a lot of anti-trans shit. So, you gotta take it with a grain of salt where you can get good stuff. Jordan Peterson would be another member of that
Eric
tribe.
Weinstein said that there's truth in it, even though it's not true.
Yes. And I think it's a really, it's a fascinating concept where on the surface, it's easily rejected because that's bullshit. Yeah. They can't shoot their quills. But the message behind it is teaching children or others, hey, stay away from that little cat thing with the spikes on it. I got to create
another example of it. Here's one. George Washington and the cherry tree. We all know, like, that story circulated, and even when it was circulating in the 1700s, everyone said, that never happened. Like, we know that didn't happen. It's not a true story, but there's truth in it. And ironically, it's a story about telling the truth, which I think is just kind of nutty. So it's not true, but it's truth about truth. Yeah, so let's look at it with the communion, that it's a cracker. And it might be a little bit further on what I'm trying to get at, is that that for people who, not you, not me, but people who take communion and it's sacrosanct, it's their thing, they know it's a cracker. They know it. They're not dumb. They know it's a cracker. And at the same time, they know that they're communing and they're having a oneness experience with their highest power, so that they can have both at the same time. It's not just blindly accepting it because you were told it since you were 4 years old, and it's not throwing it away because you came to be rational Sam Harris and you said, well, this is all bullshit. But it's going beyond it and saying it can be both at the same time.
Rabbi, earlier you were talking about, or you asked the question, boy, that's not a fair payoff, to go through that indoctrination to get maybe some advantage in your mindfulness practices or meditation. What about the payoff of religion? Like, you're presenting a lot of positives, and I can appreciate that. Is it a fair payoff to humanity, though, to say, like, the community, the mental health benefits that you're bringing up that I can certainly appreciate. Is it a fair payoff for what that kind of thinking of things like in this ethos beyond us, that sort of thing, that allows us to do a lot of evil shit, man?
Yeah, but dude, really, but in the name of capitalism. You know what kind of evil shit's been done? In the name of communism, in the name of Nazism. None of them have God in their titles. Mm-hmm. Evil shit gets done anyhow. I think it's a cheap shot at religion. And it doesn't. In either way, you come off with either you do the analysis and you say more good has been done, or you do the analysis and more evil has been done. It's not going to. You're in my discussion's not going to. Is a drop of water in the ocean. Religion, organized religion, ain't going anywhere.
Right, that's fair. And one could bring up all of the secular governments outside, that emerged out of communism, and how they somehow they found their own form of religion, just a political one.
It's the end of Animal Farm, right? And the pigs and the people, and you can't tell one from the other. It doesn't matter. It's just what happens.
How about the maybe it's not necessarily the religion, but it's the dogma, in the sense of, you look at North Korea, they don't believe in God, but they turn their political leaders into some kind of deity. And
so that is God. They just use they have a different God than we do.
Maybe it's
dogma.
Not.
I think it's dangerous to try to control people's thoughts. That's a losing game. It's bad. It's a bad idea. I think people should be. And when you give people dogma, you say you're out of the club, you're not even going to be welcome in this family if you ever say that again, and you're a bad person if you ever think that again. That's fucked up shit. People have their own. I got freedom. If I have nothing else, I have the freedom inside my own head.
What about a check system? Some kind of check and balance where inside the faith itself, inside whatever form of religion you have, doesn't there need to be something that says, I believe it to this point, but I'm not going that far. Maybe that's the flaw, is some people don't have the same check and balance system that you do.
Right, and look at the way the system's made. Is the people who go to the seminaries, the people who are running it, they tend to believe it in a stronger way, and so they're constantly pushing people to be more and more devout and to show their allegiance more and more, so that it gets really dangerous. I don't know how you would put a checks and balances in, except to give people the freedom to leave. In our world, you can do that. In the 1700s, if you got kicked out of your religious community, good luck finding a meal, buddy. You can't shop at the market anymore.
Could it be time? You're representing Judaism in a very positive way, but it's been around for a lot longer than Christianity and Islam
too. I mean, there are groups of Jews who, if you don't toe the line exactly, you're out of the club. And there's some horrible abuses that are done in Judaism as well.
Yeah,
it seems like come from a very liberal strain of Judaism.
The religions that last a little longer seem to be a lot more peaceful and a lot less judgmental. Is that just a perception on my end, or do you think there's something to it?
Because think about the Shakers. They were all about peace, love, and not indoctrinating everyone, and they only made it maybe 50 years.
Yeah, because you can't really say Buddhists don't have their own modern day issues with violence themselves.
Everyone has. So there's a beautiful quote from David Foster Wallace said, "In the day-to-day trenches of the real world, there's no such thing as atheism. You're going to worship your body and beauty, or you're going to worship money and power, or you're going to worship something else. But everyone believes in something."
I call bullshit on that one.
All right.
I was with you up until there.
Hey,
we can't agree about everything.
Listen to your show. If I got this far in and that's the first time you're calling bullshit on me, I feel like a record setter.
That's funny. Who's another one? Sikhs have done well.
Is it a fucking competition?
Yeah. Well,
who's winning? How do you win this game?
I don't know.
You get to stay along the longest. You get the most number of people who believe your religion. That doesn't mean that you're right. There are a billion Catholics. That doesn't mean that they're right. Judaism's been around so long. That doesn't mean that it's right. Unless it resonates with you. unless it resonates with me, it's not right.
Isn't that the
and it doesn't
kind
matter
of,
how many people believe it. That doesn't prove anything.
Isn't that the point of religion to some extent, though, is from a social construct, it does try to spread itself.
Everything does that. Organizations, like organisms, are into self-perpetuation.
Right. So I think it's fair to base the success of a religion off of whether or not it's been able to sustain and adapt.
Sure. When I run a service, what makes my service meaningful? That there are a lot of people there, or that 3 people had tears on their cheeks and got in touch with something? Like, how am I going to... What we're dealing with is not definable. And if you defined it, I think you lost it. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the infinite here.
What do you think will happen when we die?
Not much.
You think the light goes out? The switch is off? No more Brian?
That's as far as I understand. Yeah. I mean, I might be in for quite a surprise, but I had a professor who says, I'm doing this one life at a time.
Even if it's just the one.
This is what I got. I'm going to work with this one here. And I could not believe that any deity, anything that's supposed to be bigger, better than me, would make the rule that if I don't follow it, I'm going to be damned for all time. Well, fucking, like, who told you God's a dick, and why did you believe them?
So I'm going to ask you a question I'm sure you've been asked many times. Rabbi Brian, close us out with this one. What's the meaning of life? What's our purpose? What are we doing here? I
think I've not said this. I had no idea what I was going to say, Robert, and here's what just came to me, and we could say either the spirits, so if it comes out bad, it's all on the spirit here.
Fair enough.
I think it's about freedom. I think it's about setting ourselves free. It's about noticing where we're constrained and working towards liberation. Liberation from our sense of self, liberation from thinking, liberation from anger.
Rabbi Brian, I really like that. I really appreciate the conversation we've had. I feel loose. I don't know what that is. I feel comfortable. I feel relaxed. Thank you.
I did my job.
You're a very well-spoken individual, and I hope to talk to you again. We should totally do this
brother.
again.
I really did enjoy our conversation.
ROTB.org. I recommend everybody go and visit that site. It will be in the show notes. Once again, Rabbi Brian, thank you for your time, sir. Thank you to Rabbi Brian. Thank you to Dave Blair at DaveBlairMusic.com. Thank you to Feedspot.com for promoting the Right to Reason to the top 10 atheist podcasts. Thank you to our patrons: Jason Parker, Freethinker215, Alan Marks, Philip Spawn, Bernard Lamberell, Anima Man, Larry Wilson, and our top supporter, Rob Montgomery. You can support this broadcast at patreon.com/right and learn more at therighttoreason.com. Next week, I'm talking to a racist, misogynist, anti-Semitic, Holocaust-denying, pro-fascist Nazi. He goes by the alias Gordon Cal and is the host of Octoon Americaner. Between now and then, remember that you have the right to reason.
This is the Right to Reason podcast.